welcome to Bella TV. This is Jennifer, and today I am joined by actor Ian Unterman. If you've been binging Hulu's newest show, Dopesick, you would recognize him a little bit, although I have to say you look very different as your character on the show, Jonathan Sackler, which we'll get into. But Ian, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
Of course. So, as I mentioned, you're on Hulu's new show, Dopesick, alongside Michael Keaton, one of the, greatest actors ever. And
national treasure for sure.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And it essentially dives into, the opioid epidemic in America. You're part of a very big family in this movie. I'm going to let you, get into the details, but why don't you start by sharing with our viewers who maybe haven't seen it yet, just what the show is all about and your character on the show.
So Dopesick is based loosely on a book by a reporter named Beth Macy. Her book is more specifically exploring specific stories about people affected by the opioid crisis in Southern Virginia. Danny Strong rather uses that as sort of a jumping off point. And then from there sort of proceeds to tell like a vertical version of the story. So we see everything from people on the ground being affected, people who are prescribed the medicine and obviously become addicted and have issues. We see doctors who are more and end up doing so. We see the FDA, we see the DEA, we see the Justice Department all working together. And then we see Purdue Pharma, the makers of OxyContin, which is owned by the Sackler family, Richard Sackler being the sort of scion and, marketing visionary, you could say, behind OxyContin. And Jonathan is his brother. And Jonathan, I think, is a little bit of sort of a bit of an emotional touchstone for someone who doesn't have a lot of emotions in Richard. Richard is sort of very driven and almost sort of a little spectrum-y, you could say, certainly as we portray him. And so I think Jonathan is a little bit almost like an outrigger, sort of something he can sort of balance off of, but not someone who's particularly influential perhaps in his life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was funny when I was reading, reviews on the show, I saw a couple different things that mentioned, is this really a true story? How, fictitious is it? How real is it? And I'm just curious, especially preparing for your role, as someone in the Sackler family, like how did you get into character? Were you in touch with them? Is this, how accurate was it? And what exactly did you do to prepare?
It's a great question. So to the show as a whole, the storyline about the Sacklers is true to life. The storyline about the DEA, the Justice Department, the FDA, all of those are true stories taken from reporting and court documents. Once we get down into the farmer reps and the individuals affected in the mining communities in these type of areas, they're more sort of like composite stories, if you will. So those aren't specifically based on actual people. They are very much based on true events, but they're sort of an amalgam in order to, facilitate storytelling and not, sort of tell, glorify, someone's bad behavior or something. So, the Sacklers, it seems, have pretty much had everything about them scrubbed off the internet. It's very, very difficult to find anything. So as far as Jonathan, the only thing that I could find, we found 3 photographs, two of which my look is very much based off of. And then after a lot of research, I found one video where there's a symposium which he paid for. And in the course of it, he stands up and asks a question. So you just see his sort of the tip of his shoulder as they were looking at the panel. And so I could hear his voice for this one question where he says like, "Hi, my name is Jonathan Sackler from Connecticut." And that was it. So there was not a lot to draw on. So I felt very much kind of free to, once we built the look, just get to play Danny's script and get to play the character that we'd created. Jonathan also passed away last summer, I think July of 2020. So just before we started shooting December and January. So that was sort of another thing. There was news reports about his death, obviously, but for the most part, other than anything related to sort of court settlement, court documents or strict reporting, there's very little else available on the internet about them.
Yeah, I had read that they didn't even really know how to necessarily portray the characters. I guess going off of anything that is public, but I did like that. As you mentioned, not only does it follow the Sackler family and Purdue Pharma, but also there's a medical sales rep in there, and kind of his life and what it's like learning about the drug and pushing the drug, and then almost his conscience jumping in at one point. It follows, this, it's based in Virginia, this small
Mm-hmm.
town in Appalachia, which is mining country. These hardworking American people who genuinely, you know, incur these injuries and then have sometimes no other option. So they were turning to this, opioid. But they follow a woman who works in the mines who's taking it. They follow a doctor, which is obviously played by Michael Keaton. I mean, I just thought it was so interesting to see how this drug and this epidemic affected every single person on the scale that was involved.
It really it's such a beautifully structured story that way. You get such a full sort of sense of each of these levels through the story. Michael Keaton is unbelievable. Caitlin Dever is just so heartbreaking and incredible. I mean, the cast and the talent, on both sides of the camera was, intimidating to start, but so supportive and such a generous group of people. And uh, the story is just really well told. One of the things that in the course of in the course of researching is we found that the Sacklers and Purdue Pharma were intentionally targeting areas like mining where there's a high degree of injuries, but also there's sort of a culture of you're injured and you go to the doctor and take a pill, and that's sort of how you deal with your injury so you can go back to work, because you have to keep going back to work. And so they not only chose areas where there was sort of fertile ground in terms of pain and pain management, but also where there was kind of already a culture of the doctors being willing to just prescribe things and people being willing to take things. So it's just insidious on so many levels how how specifically the drug was targeted and marketed.
Yeah, and I didn't
And
realize.
continues to be so, actually,
Continues,
too.
yes, and I didn't realize, while I was watching these stories develop, I guess obviously it's a terrible addiction. It becomes an addiction. But I think watching it, and one of the things that they said that they were using as almost their biggest selling tool was that less than 1% becomes addicted, and then you see these people who start off on 10 milligrams, and then immediately, not within a state of withdrawal, but immediately after the 10-12 hours that the drug wears off, they're already going into these withdrawn states. I mean, I didn't even realize how addictive OxyContin was until I watched this.
It's incredible. I mean, opiates and opioids in general are just, based on my sort of limited experience of researching this stuff, are just more powerful than our brains can deal with. You know what I mean? And obviously there's sort of like a spectrum on that, but look, people have been getting addicted to heroin and opiates and opium for hundreds of years, thousands of years. It's not new. It's a very powerful drug that is, more than our brains can handle. The most sort of pernicious part of this particular one is when they moved into the OxyContin with the time release, right? And pretended that this time release made it a significantly different drug than it is. I do think it's worth saying that these drugs do have value, right? They do have worth in specific instances, right? When they're used, I'm not a doctor, but when they're used, people end of life and hospice care and things like this, right? Or truly debilitating pain that can't be treated any other way, and perhaps the addiction is a side effect that you can not to say deal with, but are willing to accept because it's perhaps for a short period of time or whatever, etc. But the idea that A, it could be prescribed for minor injuries, and B, that it could be continually prescribed, over a long period of time without people developing any, addiction signs is a little bit crazy.
Yeah. No, it was very enlightening, educational, obviously, hard to watch. I mean, you watch these stories, even of the progression of Michael Keaton throughout the show. But it was definitely worth watching. If anyone hasn't seen it, if you're not familiar, you have to check it out. Hulu, Dopesick. But on a lighter note, I mean, what was it like working with, Michael Keaton and just learning from these other amazing actors? I mean, I could only imagine that's got to be like a dream come true as an actor.
Yeah, a complete dream come true. So we had sort of an interesting experience here because, as we sort of been talking about, there's all these different storylines, and the storylines, some of them cross a couple times, but a few of them, mine in particular, don't really cross much else. So Michael Stuhlbarg, who plays my brother Richard Sackler and is one of my favorite actors on the planet. So I got to work with him, and we were together for all of our stuff. And his character crosses over to some of the other storylines a little bit, the FDA, et cetera. I really didn't. So the first time I sort of got to see Michael Keaton, well, I got to see him on a Zoom read through at the very beginning, which was amazing. And we're all like sitting there waiting. He comes on, he's like talking into his phone and the Zoom, and he's like trying to figure out how to get his like Zoom call going. And finally, Barry Levinson is like, "Hey, Michael, if you hang up your phone, can you still talk to us and hear us?" And Mike, like such a dad, was like, "Oh yeah, I can do that." And, like hangs up his phone and he's like on the Zoom. It was like he was so charming and so cool. And I was like, this is just an amazing human being. But then I didn't get to see him again until the premiere. So I'm absolutely in awe of his work. I read the scripts, of course, but I'm getting to see a lot of the stuff for the first time as the episodes are coming out with everyone else, which is really exciting. Working with Michael Stuhlbarg was an absolute dream come true for me. I spent a bunch of summers up at Williamstown Theater Festival years ago, and one summer there was this production of Travesties, this Tom Stoppard play this was a fantastic production. This actor comes out on stage and he's playing Tristan Zara, and I was like, what is going on? It was like this incredible, like bombastic, wild performance, and I was like, this actor is incredible. And it was a young Michael Stuhlbarg, and since then he's been in just everything. He's literally one of the greatest character actors of certainly his generation, if not all time. And to get to just walk on set with that guy and get to sort of watch his process and watch him work and just experience his generosity and his support was really exciting. It was really, really, really exciting.
He's great as well. I mean, he makes you despise him throughout the series as you're watching it, but that only is an attestament to how great of an actor he is.
Yeah, and he really is. His Richard is very sort of driven and flawed in a way that is just very, very interesting to watch. There is a little bit more footage of Richard Sackler because there's some depositions that he did that are filmed. So there is a little bit of footage of him that Michael was sort of like working off of for his look and his mannerisms. But yeah, it's an incredible performance. It was amazing to watch,
yeah, well,
in person as it was happening.
It's a great show. For anyone who hasn't seen it, definitely check it out. Dopesick on Hulu. Let everyone know before we go if you have any new exciting projects coming up, anything we can keep an eye out for, and then also where people can follow along with you.
Yes. So I right now I have a little part in The Many Saints of Newark, which is a Sopranos film, which is very exciting. If Sopranos fans out there haven't checked it out, that seems unlikely, but if they haven't, they certainly should. And then I also have a film out right now called Confetti, which is a Chinese film directed by a wonderful director named Anne Hu. And the film is about the difficulties in identifying and treating dyslexia in kids in the school system and getting them the support they need. And it's a really, really beautiful film about a mother trying to help her kid get diagnosed and get treated and get support for dyslexia, which is really lovely. And other than that, I don't know what's next, so we'll just hope something exciting comes soon. And if people want to follow along, I'm on Instagram at Ian Unterman. yeah, I'm excited for the next project, but I'm also just really, I'm very much someone who loves like working on the project, and then when the project comes out, it's exciting, but I'm sort of like, okay, what's the next thing to work on? So I'm also just working on enjoying Dopesick, and what a pleasure and how proud I am to be part of something like that. It's really, it's a big deal for me, and it's been really exciting.
Of course. Well, congratulations. You did a fantastic job, and the show is great. So thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to seeing more from you.
Thank you so much.